Hare Krishna, my dear devotees. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in the Haven, which is located in Hythe, Kent, southeast England, just a stone's throw from the English Channel. And Abhay Das Brahmachari and I are holed up here, trying to maintain this program of hearing and chanting and sending out Shabda Brahma to the world, which is more or less burning down around our ears in so many countries of the world. So much conflict, so much political chaos, violence, natural disturbances, just like the Bhagavatam predicted from the activities of the conditioned souls who are trying to conquer nature and solve problems that are self-inflicted and are causing more complicated problems. Rather than just hearing the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and the other revealed scriptures, learning what the laws of nature are and learning to live within those laws, they're creating chaos. So let us at least share these moments, this hour every day, to get real relief and learn how to live a human life and a spiritual life, devotional service. Okay, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Mahima Stotram by Srila Sanatana Goswami explains what the Bhagavatam is. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drik Prada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Prabho, Kali Dvandoditaditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you are the sun, risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Varshakshadayate, Sarvada Sarvasevyaya, Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madhika Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nishtadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chutatakara hanamunchagada chinmam premna rit kantayokspura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we've reached the 25th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 3rd Canto. The Glories of Devotional Service finally we get to hear Kapila Dev, this incarnation of Krishna, speak Sankhya philosophy. Text 1. Sri Shaunaka said, although he is unborn, the Supreme Personality of Godhead took birth as Kapila Muni by his internal potency. He descended to disseminate transcendental knowledge for the benefit of the whole human race. Purport. The word Atma Pragyaptaye indicates that the Lord descends for the benefit of the human race to give transcendental knowledge. Material necessities are quite sufficiently provided for in the Vedic knowledge, which offers a program for good living conditions and gradual elevation to the platform of goodness. In the mode of goodness, one's knowledge expands. On the platform of passion, there is no knowledge, for passion is simply an impetus to enjoy material benefits. On the platform of ignorance, there is no knowledge and no enjoyment, but simply life almost like that of animals. The Vedas are meant to elevate one from the mode of good ignorance to the platform of goodness. When one is situated in the mode of goodness, he is able to understand knowledge of the self, or transcendental knowledge. This knowledge cannot be appreciated by any ordinary man. Therefore, since a disciplic succession is required, this knowledge is expounded either by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself or by his bona fide devotee. Shaunaka Muni also states here that Kapila, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, took birth or appeared simply to appreciate and disseminate transcendental knowledge, simply to understand that one is not matter but spirit soul, aham brahmasmi, I am by nature Brahman, is not sufficient knowledge for understanding the self and his activities. One must be situated in the activities of Brahman. Knowledge of those activities is explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Such transcendental knowledge can be appreciated in human society, but not in animal society, as clearly indicated here by the word nrinam, for the human beings. Human beings are meant for regulated life. By nature, there is regulation in animal life also, but that is not like the regulated life as described in the scriptures or by the authorities. Human life is regulated life, not animal life. In regulated life, only can one understand the transcendental knowledge, understand transcendental knowledge. Text 2. Shaunaka continued, there is no one who knows more than the Lord himself. No one is more worshipable or more mature a yogi than he. He is therefore the master of the Vedas, and to hear about him always is the actual pleasure of the senses. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita it is stated that no one can be equal to or greater than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is confirmed in the Vedas also. Eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman. He is the supreme living entity and is supplying the necessities of all other living entities. Thus, all other living entities, both Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva, are subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. The same concept is confirmed here. na yasya varshmana pungsang. Amongst the living entities, no one can surpass the Supreme Person, because no one is richer, more famous, stronger, more beautiful, wiser, or more renounced than he. These qualifications make him the Supreme Godhead, the cause of all causes. Yogis are very proud of performing wonderful feats, but no one can compare to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is associated with the Supreme Lord is accepted as a first-class yogi. Devotees may not be as powerful as the Supreme Lord, but by constant association with the Lord, they become as good as the Lord himself. Sometimes the devotees act more powerfully than the Lord. Of course, that is the Lord's concession. Also used here is the word varimna, meaning the most worshipable of all yogis. To hear from Krishna is the real pleasure of the senses. Shall I read that again? Oh, all right. To hear from Krishna is the real pleasure of the senses. Therefore he is known as Govinda, for by his words, by his teachings, by his instruction, by everything connected with him, he enlivens the senses. Whatever he instructs is from the Transcendental platform, and his instructions, being absolute, are non-different from him. Hearing from Krishna, or his expansion, or plenary expansion, like Kapila, is very pleasing to the senses. Bhagavad Gita can be read or heard many times, but because it gives real pleasure, the more one reads Bhagavad Gita, the more he gets the appetite to read and understand it. And each time he gets new enlightenment. That is the nature of the transcendental message. Similarly, we find the transcendental happiness in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Similarly, we find that transcendental happiness in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. The more we hear and chant the glories of the Lord, the more we become happy. Hare Krishna. Text 3. Therefore, please precisely describe all the activities and pastimes of the personality of Godhead, who is full of self-desire and who assumes all these activities by his internal potency. Purport. The word anukirtaya is very significant. Anukirtaya means to follow the description, not to create a concocted mental description, but to follow. Shonaka Rishi requested Sutta Goswami to describe what he had actually heard from his spiritual master, Shukadeva Goswami, about the transcendental pastimes the Lord manifested by his internal energy. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has no material body, but he can assume any kind of body by his supreme will. That is made possible by his internal energy. Text 4. Sri Sutta Goswami said, the most powerful sage, Maitreya, was a friend of Vyasadeva. Being encouraged and pleased by Vidura's inquiry about transcendental knowledge, Maitreya spoke as follows. Purport. Questions and answers are very satisfactorily dealt with when the inquirer is bona fide and the speaker is also authorized. Here Maitreya is considered a powerful sage, and therefore he is also described as Bhagavan. This word can be used not only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but for anyone who is almost as powerful as the Supreme Lord. Maitreya is addressed as Bhagavan because he was spiritually far advanced. He was a personal friend of Dvaipayana Vyasadeva, a literary incarnation of the Lord. Maitreya was very pleased with the inquiries of Vidura because they were the inquiries of a bona fide, advanced devotee. Thus Maitreya was encouraged to answer. When there are discourses on transcendental topics between devotees of equal mentality, the questions and answers are very fruitful and encouraging. Text 5. Maitreya said, when Kardama left for the forest, Lord Kapila stayed on the strand of the Bindu Sarovara to please his mother, Devahuti. Purport. In the absence of the father, it is the duty of the grown son to take charge of his mother and serve her to the best of his ability, so that she will not feel separation from her husband. It is the duty of the husband to leave home as soon as there is a grown son to take charge of his wife and family affairs. That is the Vedic system of household life. One should not remain continually implicated in household affairs up to the time of death. He must leave. Family affairs and the wife may be taken charge of by a grown son. Text 6. When Kapila, who could show her the ultimate goal of the absolute truth, was sitting leisurely before her, Devahuti remembered the words of Brahma. Devahuti remembered the words Brahma had spoken to her, and she therefore began to question Kapila Dev as follows. Text 7. Devahuti said, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses. For because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. Purport. Here the word asad indriya tarshanat is significant. Asat means impermanent, temporary, and indriya means senses. Thus, asad indriya tarshanat means from being agitated by the temporarily manifest senses of the material body. We are evolving through different statuses of material bodily existence, sometimes in a human body, sometimes in an animal body. And therefore the engagements of our material senses are also changing. Anything which changes is called temporary or asat. We should know that beyond these temporary senses are our permanent senses, which are now covered by the material body. The permanent senses, being contaminated by matter, are not acting properly. Devotional service, therefore, involves freeing the senses from this contamination. When the contamination is completely removed and the senses act in the purity of unalloyed Krishna consciousness, we have reached sadindriya, or eternal sensory activities. Eternal sensory activities are called devotional service, whereas temporary sensory activities are called sense gratification. Unless one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. Devahuti expressed that she was tired. Now that her husband had left home, she wanted to get relief by hearing the instructions of Lord Kapila. Text 8. Your Lordship is my only means of getting out of this darkest region of ignorance. because you are my transcendental I, which by your mercy only I have attained after many, many births. Purport. This verse is very instructive, since it indicates the relationship between the spiritual master and the disciple. The disciple or conditioned soul is put into the darkest region of ignorance and therefore is entangled in the material existence of sense gratification. It is very difficult to get out of this entanglement and attain freedom. But if one is fortunate enough to get the association of a spiritual master like Kapila Muni or his representative, then by his grace one can be delivered from the mire of ignorance. The spiritual master is therefore worshipped as one who delivers the disciple from the mire of ignorance with the light of the torch of knowledge. The word paragam is very significant. Paragam refers to one who can take the disciple to the other side. The word paragam is very significant. Paragam refers to one who can take the disciple to the other side. This side is conditioned life. The other side is the life of freedom. The spiritual master takes the disciple to the other side by opening his eyes with knowledge. We are suffering simply because of ignorance. By the instruction of the spiritual master, the darkness of ignorance is removed, and thus the disciple is enabled to go to the side of freedom. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that after many, many births, one surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, if after many, many births, one is able to find a bona fide spiritual master and surrender to such a bona fide representative of Krishna, one can be taken to the side of light. Text 9. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin and Supreme Lord of all living entities. You have arisen to disseminate the rays of the sun in order to dissipate the darkness of the ignorance of the universe. Purport. Kapila Muni is accepted as an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Here the word Adya means the origin of all living entities, and Pungsang, Ishvara, means the Lord, Ishvara, of the living entities. Ishvarak, Paramak, Krishna. Kapila Muni is the direct expansion of Krishna, who is the sun of spiritual knowledge. As the sun dissipates the darkness of the universe, so when the light of the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes down, it at once dissipates the darkness of Maya. We have our eyes, but without the light of the sun, our eyes are of no value. Similarly, without the light of the Supreme Lord, without the light of the Supreme Lord, or without the divine grace of the spiritual master, one cannot see things as they are. Text 10. Now be pleased, my Lord, to dispel my great delusion. Due to my feeling of false ego, I have been engaged by your Maya and have identified myself with the body and consequent bodily relations. Purport. The false ego of identifying one's body as oneself and of claiming things possessed in relationship with the body is called Maya. In Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, the Lord says, I am sitting in everyone's heart, and from me come everyone's remembrance and forgetfulness. Devahuti has stated that false identification of the body with the self and attachment for possessions in relation to the body are also under the direction of the Lord. Does this mean that the Lord discriminates by engaging one in his devotional service and another in sense gratification? If that were true, it would be an incongruity on the part of the Supreme Lord. But that is not the actual fact. As soon as the living entity forgets his real constitutional position of eternal servitorship to the Lord and wants instead to enjoy himself by sense gratification, he is captured by Maya. This capture by Maya is the consciousness of false identification with the body and attachment for the possessions of the body. These are the activities of Maya, and since Maya is also an agent of the Lord, it is indirectly the action of the Lord. The Lord is merciful. If anyone wants to forget him and enjoy this material world, he gives him full facility, not directly, but through the agency of his material potency. Therefore, since the material potency is the Lord's energy, indirectly it is the Lord who gives the facility to forget him. Devahuti therefore said, my engagement in sense gratification was also due to you. Now kindly get me free from this entanglement. By the grace of the Lord, one is allowed to enjoy this material world. But when one is disgusted with material enjoyment and is frustrated, and when one sincerely surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord, then the Lord is so kind that he frees one from entanglement. Krishna says therefore in Bhagavad Gita, first of all, surrender, and then I will take charge of you and free you from all reactions of sinful activities. Sinful activities are those activities performed in forgetfulness of our relationship with the Lord. In this material world, activities for material enjoyment, which are considered to be pious, are also sinful. For example, one sometimes gives something in charity to a needy person with a view to getting back the money 4 times increased. Giving with the purpose of gaining something is called charity in the mode of passion. Everything done here is done in the modes of material nature, and therefore all activities but service to the Lord are sinful. Because of sinful activities, we become attracted by the illusion of material attachment, and we think, I am this body. I think of the body as myself, and of bodily possessions as mine. Devahuti requested Lord Kapila to free her from that entanglement of false identification and false possession. Text 11. Devahuti continued, I have taken shelter of your lotus feet because you are the only person of whom to take shelter. You are the axe which can cut the tree of material existence. I therefore offer my obeisances unto you, who are the greatest of all transcendentalists. And I inquire from you as to the relationship between man and woman and between spirit and matter. Purport. Sankhya philosophy, as is well known, deals with Prakriti and Purusha. Purusha is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or anyone who imitates the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an enjoyer. And Prakriti means nature. In this material world, material nature is being exploited by the Purushas, or the living entities. The intricacies in the material world of the relationship of the Prakriti and Purusha, or the enjoyed and the enjoyer, is called samsara, or material entanglement. Devahuti wanted to cut the tree of material entanglement, and she found this suitable weapon in Kapila Muni. The tree of material existence is explained in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as an Ashwatha tree, whose root is upwards and whose branches are downwards. It is recommended there that one has to cut the root of this material existential tree with the axe of detachment. What is the attachment? The attachment involves Prakriti and Purusha. The living entities are trying to lord it over material nature. Since the conditioned soul takes material nature to be the object of his enjoyment, and he takes the position of the enjoyer, he is therefore called Purusha. Devahuti questioned Kapila Muni, for she knew that only he could cut her attachment to this material world. The living entities in the guises of men and women are trying to enjoy the material energy. Therefore, in one sense, everyone is Purusha, because Purusha means enjoyer, and Prakriti means enjoyed. In the material world, both the so-called man and so-called woman are imitating the real Purusha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is actually the enjoyer in the transcendental sense, whereas all others are Prakriti. The living entities are considered Prakriti. In Bhagavad Gita, matter is analyzed as apara, or inferior nature, whereas beyond this inferior nature, there is another, superior nature, the living entities. The living entities are also Prakriti, or enjoyed, but under the spell of Maya, the living entities are falsely trying to take the position of enjoyers. That is the cause of samsara bandha, or conditional life. Devahuti wanted to get out of conditional life and place herself in full surrender. The Lord is Sharanya, which means the only worthy personality to whom one can fully surrender, because he is full of all opulences. If anyone actually wants relief, the best course is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is also described here as Saddharma Vidang Varishnam. This indicates that of all transcendental occupations, the best occupation is eternal loving service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharma is sometimes translated as religion, but that is not exactly the meaning. Dharma actually means that which one cannot give up. Dharma actually means that which one cannot give up, that which is inseparable from oneself. The warmth of fire is inseparable from fire. Therefore, warmth is called the Dharma, or nature of fire. Similarly, Saddharma means eternal occupation. That eternal occupation is engagement in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The purpose of Kapila Dev's Sankhya philosophy is to propagate pure, uncontaminated devotional service, and therefore he is addressed here as the most important personality amongst those who know the transcendental occupation of the living entity. Hare Krishna. These are Devahuti's questions. Very deep, very substantial, very meaningful. We're going to stop here. It's almost 8 o'clock, believe it or not. And we'll start tomorrow at text 12. Hare Krishna. Now we, with anticipation, wait for the reflections of the devotees upon these lovely questions by Devahuti and Prabhupada's enlightening purports.
Bhakta Christopher.
Hare Krishna Bhakti Christopher.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Jai, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you for sharing this wonderful transcendental message. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to His divine grace and all glories to the message of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
From Jagamohan.
Hare Krishna Jagamohan, Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj, and dear devotees, please accept my respectful obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hari Bol.
Albert Einstein is quoted as describing compound interest as the eighth wonder of the world for its exponential growth patterns. With that in mind, I was reflecting on how magnanimous the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam must be. In just this third canto, we are hearing a narrative from Sutta to Shaunaka, who is explaining the conversation from Shukadeva Goswami to King Parikshit, describing a conversation between the sages Maitreya and Vidura, who are further describing the pastime of how the great sage Kardama and his wife Devahuti established parenthood to the Lord in the form of Kapila Dev. All this translated and commented upon by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. This must be exponentially compounding transcendental knowledge that is truly priceless.
What a nice reflection. Compound interest. And not only that, but every time you read it, I guess that's the idea. Every time you read it, it gets better and better. Yes, it's true. One gets more and more relief. One gets more and more enlightened. One gets more and more eager. And eventually Krishna reveals himself in the Bhagavatam. And all these personalities reveal themselves in the Bhagavatam. Such good fortune. Good investment, I'd say. Hare Krishna. The best investment of our time, as we heard in the very beginning.
He says, thank you for your continued service. All glories to the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam.
Hare Krishna, by the blessings of the Vaishnavas.
From Gauranga Gopal.
Yes, Gauranga Gopal. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for reading tonight. I'm so grateful for Mother Devahuti to ask these questions to her son, the Lord. Quote, I am very sick of the disturbance caused by my material senses, for because of this sense disturbance, my Lord, I have fallen into the abyss of ignorance. I can relate.
Yes, as can we all. And it's, you know, as the world turns, as the difficulties are complicated by attempts to solve the self-created problems. They're creating the problems by how they're utilizing and exploiting the material energy, and then they're devising means to solve the problem. And every time they do that, the problems increase exponentially. So in other words, the same compound interest analogy that was just given also applies to the material side also. compound interest of suffering, compound interest of, material entanglements, attachment, and misery. No one can say that they're fully happy in this material world, because it's not possible. Because everything in this material world is temporary. Even our own bodies are temporary. How can we say we're not? And they're changing at every moment, causing disturbance to the soul, which is not changing. You're surrounded by things that are changing, and you're not changing. How are you going to feel? You're going to feel discomfort. Therefore, it's concomitant. And Krishna defines the material world as dukkhalayam, ashasvatam, temporary and full of misery. So yes, hearing the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, hearing from the Lord, is enlightenment, is real knowledge. And only by hearing from Him and His bona fide representatives, such as Srila Prabhupada, can we become relieved from the darkness of material ignorance. So even though it may appear to be repetitive, Srila Prabhupada's purports, it is repetitive by nature of necessity. We need to hear it again and again, because time is so strong. If we don't, we will forget. And the world's situation is testimony to this truth, this universal truth, law of nature. If you let a material form just sit there, it will disintegrate. That is the nature of the material world. It's the nature of time. Therefore, the attempt to become happy and have a permanent settlement in this material world is actually futile. It's a waste of human energy. It's so simple that people think it's too easy, too good to be true, that just by hearing the Bhagavatam we can become free from illusion and happy. Hare Krishna.
And from Bhakta Christopher.
Yes, Bhakta Christopher.
Hare Krishna. I really appreciate this part of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It gives us an amazing example of the mindset we should be in, so that we can ask proper questions.
Yes.
That is very helpful for someone like me.
For all of us. Hare Krishna, thank you.
And from Gauranga Gopal.
Yes, Gauranga Gopal.
I was also wondering, what is the difference between the Sankhya wisdom explained by Kapila Dev here in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and the Sankhya philosophy talked about in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita? Srila Prabhupada mentions in purport to Bhagavad Gita 239, quote, real Sankhya philosophy is described by Lord Kapila in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, but even that Sankhya has nothing to do with the current topics. Unquote. Thank you.
Well, it hasn't started yet. He hasn't started explaining Sankhya philosophy yet. But the difference, and there is no difference, actually. In the beginning of the Gita, Krishna explains how to discriminate between matter and spirit. And that's the essence of Sankhya philosophy. But Kapila Dev explains it in much greater detail, in much greater depth, in terms of the creation of the universe, the purpose of the elements, and etc., etc. So, yeah, you'll see as we go along. But the basic difference is that the Bhagavatam unpacks the information in the Gita. Everything is there in the Gita, but it is unpacked in terms of detail and comprehensiveness in the Bhagavatam. unless we understand the basic knowledge, it's actually impossible to go to the higher knowledge of our personal relationship with Krishna and the activities in the spiritual world, and to be able to enter into them. We have to build our house of bhakti, and the foundation of the house of bhakti are freedom from envy and truthfulness. And then we inquire. That's what makes for a bona fide inquirer. And when an inquirer is bona fide, and the teacher is bona fide, then the knowledge gradually expands until it is capable of delivering us from material existence. The light of transcendental knowledge lights up everything. This is what is described in the Gita also. The light of transcendental knowledge lights up everything, just like the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
From Vrajaloka Devi Dasi.
From?
Vrajaloka.
Vrajaloka, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for giving us the transcendental knowledge and taking us to the side of light and helping us to see things as they are. It was sobering to hear the purport of verse 7. Quote, eternal sensory activities are called devotional service, whereas temporary sensory activities are called sense gratification. Unless when one becomes tired of material sense gratification, there is no opportunity to hear transcendental messages from a person like Kapila. Unquote. In these days we went to preach to a youth festival to the countryside. We can see that so many young try to enjoy, but many are tired of sense gratification. They keep trying because they do not know where else they can go for happiness. Please give your blessings to be a good instrument to shake them up and inspire them to hear about spiritual topics. Hare Krishna.
Yes, well, the miseries of material existence are actually the mercy of the Lord. It's actually Krishna's mercy that we can't enjoy in this material world. Because if we could, we wouldn't be able to go back to the spiritual world. So this is Krishna's mercy. So if we learn to see the suffering of others and allow ourselves to be inspired by compassion to help them, then we immediately become relieved. As Prabhupada said many times, train the mind to always be doing good for others, and then your mind becomes satisfied. With a satisfied mind, then you can hear about Krishna. And you won't be distracted by the glitter of the material energy. And by Krishna's mercy, that glitter of the material energy is becoming more like a fire than a glitter, and causing untold suffering. So yes, thank you very much. Please continue. This wonderful opportunity that Krishna has given you to be able to preach to young people and help them come out of their misery. It's the greatest gift, and it makes you dear to Krishna. As a matter of fact, a person who is doing this, teaching truth to the conditioned souls, are the most dear to Krishna. No one is more dear. No one will ever become more dear than the person who's doing that. And it doesn't make any difference if you're not a big scholar and a big, traveling sannyasi, preacher. Just the willingness to repeat what we've heard from actual authoritative sources, such as Srila Prabhupada, is enough, according to our capacity. Whatever we do in that regard will perfect our lives and give us real happiness. And when those people see a person who's really happy, they're not seeing it. But when they meet a devotee, they see someone who's really happy. So it's our duty to advance in devotional service so that we can be instruments to give happiness to others. You can't give what you don't have. Therefore, we want to become fully Krishna conscious, just so that we can give that happiness to others. Hare Krishna. Purpose of life, real meaning. The end of boredom. Thank you so much for your lovely reflections tonight, as usual. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta-vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. See you tomorrow night. Same time, same place, same topic. And Kapila Deva is going to start to answer the questions of Devahuti. I mean, the questions are wonderful. What to speak of the answers. See you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.